So, the fact that we're less than 48 hours from the draft, Paul, I have one question for you. Are you ready?
Oh my God, I cannot wait. I cannot wait.
No!
The NFL draft is the most fortuitous time in my life. It is. It's where everything that is. There's just no way for me to phrase it. And as a Bills fan, it's cool to come into a year where you know there's so much hope, but there's no like definitive gotta have this guy. Like it's so awesome.
We're not looking for a quarterback.
I know,
How
right?
How beautiful is that?
I know. It's you can't beat it. You just can't beat it.
Nope, you cannot. So I mean, a lot of people have been talking this week, and us included, talking about what's going to go on with the draft, what's going to happen, and we decided to basically have a forum as close as we could to the draft for any of our subscribers if they wanted to try to message us or have any late questions for us, given all the developments that have been going on with the NFL. And the mock drafts have all been done, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Obviously, we didn't do any, but that being said, I mean, yeah, I know. I flirted with the idea, and I got an idea of certain players that I like for certain teams, but I didn't. Whatever. But it was one of those things where let's see how close we can get to the draft, and let's say what are any last minute questions from our subscribers that they have. So.
Yeah, there's a lot out there, and I think I think a lot of people say, well, Bill signed T.J. Yeldon. Let's just cross running back off as one of those top needs. I don't really think that happened here, right? So you take a look at the Bill signing T.J. Yeldon. Let's just unpack that for a minute, right? You bring in a guy on really near no money, right, for 2 years. And that's not bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you have 3 running backs who are walking into the last year of their deal, and you just brought in a guy on a 2-year deal. I mean, you're not looking at any major commitment here. So I can't say that the signing of T.J. Yeldon knocks this off as a requirement for the Bills. What it does is it gives you a running back on your roster next year that you don't have right now. Because you're going to lose 3 running backs to free agency if all contracts stay exactly the way that they are through the rest of this season. So the signing of T.J. Yeldon just gives you a back who started games in the NFL pretty recently on your roster, not only this year but next year. It doesn't preclude them from taking a running back at all. There's barely any commitment to T.J. Yeldon here. So I still think this is a draft where you're going to see the Bills go and get a running back at some point. Where you're going to take one is a matter of where you think that position is currently valued. And Mario, you and I have talked about this on an episode a few weeks ago, where if you look around the NFL, man, starting running backs, they're not all drafted in the 5th round or undrafted. Yeah, you get those guys, but you're still looking at a majority of the running backs that start in this league are 3rd-round picks or higher.
Yeah, it's really funny because we had an episode, I think it was maybe like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and we were talking about like rapid fire questions and answers or whatever, and I brought up TJ Yeldon, and you emphatically told me, stop. I go, he's a free agent.
Yeah.
So it's really fun. We're the chat, as you know, Paul, starting to fly off the handle right away. As far as the TJ Yeldon angle goes, I mean, I like the fact that they were able to get somebody like that, young guy. He can catch the ball out of the backfield. He gives you some options offensively. I don't know if the Bama connection is going to make a difference. I really don't think so. But at least you did something prior. I mean, they did that. This is the formula for the Bills. They did it with Chris Ivory. They signed him for 2 years, and they got him, and then they went younger. I mean, I wonder what Chris Ivory's got to be thinking. It happened to him in Jacksonville and just happened to him in Buffalo. So. Right. That being said, a lot of people keep talking in the chat. At first couple of comments, I'll scroll up and get them. With all the picks Cameron Davis, with all the picks the Bills have, what side of the ball do you think the Bills focus on more during the draft? Personally, I think in the early rounds they're going to probably focus on defense, and then the later rounds, like you said, they could take a running back, they could take another tackle, and because now a lot of the tackles and guards that they signed this year are only on 1-2 year deals, so they can get some depth. They could try to get a couple guys that they can coach up. Where do you think the Bills do with their picks? Because a lot of people have them trading back, but I know we talked
Yeah,
about it on an episode earlier this week.
yeah. So a couple guys have actually mentioned that in the chat. I know Midnight Hood. He's mentioned the Bills trading back. I saw a couple other comments are mentioned about the trade backs as well. I mean, and Cloud Atlas, that's who it was mentioned about trade back. Yeah, it's if you're the Bills, right? You're in play at 9, but you don't have to be at 9 if you don't want to be. You have the ammo to go up, right? You have the ammo to go back. It's totally up to you what you choose to do there. Could they stay? Yeah, they could. And they're going to get one hell of a player at 9. But did they have to stay at 9? No, man. I looked at if they're going to trade back, getting assets this year doesn't really help them, right? They've got like almost 80 guys on the roster right now. Like after the draft, you're going to have 80 guys. You can only carry 90, so there's going to come a point where you're drafting guys just to cut them. So why would you do that? So trading back, I think, is going to become a priority for them if they can start acquiring assets next year. Because you're absolutely right. Maybe start taking a look at a lot of the off-season acquisitions. They are. It's the same thing as TJ Yeldon, where it's offensive line guys with not a massive commitment, right? So you're protecting yourself against not getting what you're looking for in the draft and getting a veteran line in, and everybody goes, okay, well, the Bills have addressed the offensive line. Well, again, there's not major commitments here. There's nothing saying that they're not going to cut half the guys that they just signed in free agency, because they very well could. And it's nice to be in a position where you can look at it. I know Buffalo fan mentions a lot of people are mocking a lot of corners to us, and that's the one position I think we can all kind of agree on. The Bills seem to be able to just rotate in guys at that other cornerback position. I don't really see corner as a real high need. I mean, yeah, Levi Wallace graded out great, but you don't see corner as a day one pick for them, do you?
Only in my dreams of putting Greedy Williams across from Trey White do I see that. But it's not, like you said, if you're going to draft within the top 10, you're going to draft a guy that you need, and not necessarily drafting for need. But it's still one of those things where you got to draft a guy that will help your team immediately. There's a corner, the number one guy you need to help your team immediately. No, you got Levi Wallace there. Teron Johnson's coming back off an injury. You're talking about the Bills were first in pass defense as far as yardage per game, like for opponents. I mean, they were 18th overall. They were 16th against the run. I think that's where the focus comes in on, is what are they gonna do to their defense in order to stop the run, be more consistent stopping the run. True, when your offense is 30th in scoring, 31st in the pass, and 9th in the run, it doesn't seem like, where should you put the focus on? But they got Josh Allen. They picked up a bunch of receivers. They picked up a bunch of offensive linemen that can come in that graded phenomenally in pass protection. So it's one of those. Where do you want to go? Would I love a corner opposite of him? Yeah, that'd be great. But I think you already have that on your team. So I'm not sure what area they want to go in. And a lot of people keep talking about the Noah Fant or TJ Hawkinson, and it's been a hot topic. You were on the Hawkinson train, I think, longer than anybody, because everyone was on the Fant train. Can you give me, I know we talked about it in an episode, but for some of our new subscribers that may not know, can you give us just a brief breakdown of what Brian Dable has done with tight ends in his career?
Yeah. See this blank look on my face? That's about sums it up. Now again, you take a look at the tight ends that he's had, and they've been pedestrian tight ends, right? So it's not like he's had a wealth of talent at the position, but the fact still remains that it's a position of need, right? You went out and you signed a tackle who is now playing tight end for you, right? So there's one. You've got you've brought in Tyler Croft, right, who can do a little bit of both. He can catch some passes for you. He can run block for you. But adding a guy like Noah Fant is a scary thought, man, to have an athlete like that. at the tight end position. He's a scary individual from a purely athletic standpoint. So you look at Fant and you say, okay, well, there's the athlete that you would dream of having at the tight end position. But then you look at somebody like T.J. Hawkinson and you say, well, this is a guy who doesn't come off the field. Like, he can stay on at all times. Where Fant doesn't really give you that in those run blocking sets. You're going to be cycling him out a bit. But even with all that being said, the fact still remains that a tight end at 9 is a terrifying proposition. Last tight end drafted in the top 10 was for Detroit, Eric Ebron.
Yeah, my boy.
But that was like almost 10 years ago. Like, it's just time. It just doesn't happen often, right? And I don't think Hawkinson's going to be the guy that breaks the top 10. Hawkinson becomes a target if you start trading back. I mean, you have to look at Ed Oliver. I see Ed Oliver's name all over the place.
Oh, people love Oliver, man.
About Ed Oliver. Ed Oliver all over the place. I see James Edward brings up my boy, and I saw a Bills fan bring it up as well. Bills fan 7883 is Bryce Love. Who, once you get later in the draft, a lot of people are saying Bryce Love in the 5th, Bryce Love in the 4th. I don't even know if he's going to make it that far. Even with the injury, I still think some team's going to snag him in the 3rd. So there's definitely some great players available for some value, but I can't be honest and tell you I know where the Bills are going at 9. DK Metcalf, I saw who put it in there, Marshall Parker, asked about DK. He should be the pick. Again, DK becomes an option to me at 9 if you've traded back and acquire another first-round pick. Or you're trading back into the first round.
9 scares me.
What was that?
9 scares me for him. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I just think that's a little too high. I mean, in my personal opinion, am I a professional scout? No. Have I watched football for over 30 years? Yes. So, I mean, I like Metcalf a little bit lower, like you said. And it's not because I'm ragging on the guy or whatever like that. It's just like a bunch of all those other players. You say, okay, would you like him? There's a reason why guys trade out of the top 10 sometimes, because the player that they want, they think they can get later, and they don't want to invest that much in a guy that high. As far as from a numbers standpoint, I know we've talked about this on previous broadcasts, but I'll just bring it up again real quick. When you draft a guy in the top 10, all the first-round picks have a 5th-year option on them. Everybody knows that. They have a 5th-year option that you can exercise. If you're drafted in the top 10 of the first round, your 5th-year option goes on the top 10 of those or the tag or whatever, basically, on the 5th-year option is the top 10 of your position. If you're drafted 11 through 32, they take the average of the 3rd through the 25th at your position. So we saw it this year with, I believe it was Anthony Barr and Shaq Thompson. They had almost a $6 million difference in their tags if they were to be tagged this year, due to where they were drafted. And it's really tough for that. A lot of teams don't want to pay that much for a guy unless it's a guy that you're going to re-sign. In the past, it's always been left tackles. You draft a left tackle, you put on a left tackle for 15 years, and he's good. You draft a quarterback up there because you plan on that guy being your franchise, so you don't care about the 5th-year option being so high. So when it comes to that, as far as Metcalf, the last time the Bills took a wide receiver in the top 10, we all know that drama that happened that night in 2014. But to go back on your point as far as the tight ends go, Kellen Winslow ruined it for every tight end that came out after him because he was drafted 6th by the Browns. And he ruined it for everybody because he became a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
So
and I see where you're going there. There's a lot of talk in the chat as far as what is McCoy going to do? Is McCoy going to stay? McCoy's here for another year, so it doesn't really matter what he wants to do, right?
Oh yeah. I wanted to ask you, Paul. I'm sorry. I wanted to ask you about this because it was brought up to me today. As far as McCoy goes versus like a Charles Clay, I'm not comparing their talent level, but do you think that McCoy this year is in the same position that Clay came into this season? As far as they could have cut Clay last year because he wasn't producing, he wasn't involved in the game plan or whatever, and he had a very terrible year this year. And I don't foresee McCoy having a bad year coming up in 2019. However, financially, as far as their contracts, do you think that how McCoy came in or how Clay came in is comparable to how McCoy's going into this season, where they're gonna, hey, we're gonna ride it out, and then it only costs us like $1 million, $2 million dead cap if we get rid of him after the season. I'm just curious about your take on that.
So, I mean, you start to having to look down the road, right? So McCoy still fills a pretty big need for you at running back, right? I mean, he still fills a need for you. But he's, again, another piece from a previous regime. So this team has done a pretty good job of kind of cycling guys out from previous regimes, and McCoy and Hughes, they're a dying breed in Buffalo. So how long do I expect LeSean McCoy to stay in Buffalo? Well, he'll be here this year for right now. And I think that's the way you kind of have to look at it. I really think he was hurt almost all last year. I really, truthfully do. He knew that he was on the line as far as being on the roster bubble, having looked at everybody around him being gone. And I think he really, really tried to muscle through. He did not look healthy to me. He didn't look old. He didn't look healthy to me all season. And with an improved line, we'll see what happens. But I think we're going to know a lot about LeSean McCoy's future by the second week of the NFL season.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, another year in the offense, being able to be acclimated to both Debo and Allen, and then you got all these. The offensive line is the thing that kind of not so much scares me the most what's going on, but they do have to try to gel pretty quickly. As far as McCoy goes, and it wasn't an injury that was a ligament or anything like that. It was his ribs. So trying to be a running back in the NFL, I've never done it, sorry, but your ribs are injured and you're trying to make the cuts that McCoy makes. He's not going to make them the same that he's always made them in the past. True, he's getting up there in age, but he doesn't have a lot of touches. And like other backs that are his age. He hasn't been grinded into the ground in that respect. So I really think that there were some things that were wrong with him. But the thing that was really interesting, we mentioned it prior, you actually brought it up to me, was when Ivory was out for a game and McCoy came in. He had one of his best games of the year. He is such a rhythm runner that you can't just give him 12 to 15 touches a game and expect him to be explosive. He's a guy that has to touch the ball 20 times a game. How does that conflict with what Dable is trying to do with it in installing his air raid concept? Do you think that's going to affect the rhythm of McCoy being a number one back, the signing of Gore, the signing of Yeldon? How is that going to affect a rhythm runner such as McCoy?
That's a great question, right? McCoy is a volume guy. Like that's an outstanding point. So once you start looking at, we've talked about we want the Bills to start throwing the ball more. We want to see Allen, start hawking it a little bit more. Okay, well let's go to 35 pass attempts a game, but you only get 50 snaps on offense. 50, 55 snaps on offense, and that's about what you're going to get. So, you're really just slowly taking away from the run game, right? And the Bills don't really utilize the running backs in their pass game, right? They have in the last couple seasons. So, you're looking at wide receivers, to try and get a majority of your pass volume, and they really don't use the running backs like you see with Kamara, like you see with McCaffrey. That's not the offense the Bills run. Even though those offenses may throw the ball off, then they're Allen's throwing it downfield. He's not throwing it to his running back. So is that something that we're going to see more this year? I don't know, man. TJ Yeldon catches the ball pretty well. So you have to assume that they've brought in a lot of guys who graded out really well in pass protection along the offensive line. So it really does make you wonder if the Bills are going to say, okay, we're going to transition away from, LeSean McCoy being a volume guy, and he's going to have to learn to live on 10, 12, 14 carries a game and 3 targets. That's going to be your volume. That's what you're going to get.
Yeah.
And I don't know how that's going to play out. And I don't think he's got a lot of trade value. I saw Christopher Upshaw mention, do y'all think they're going to trade LeSean McCoy? I really don't think that he's got much trade value. With the contract that he's on, I just don't see it. And especially with the year that he put up last year. If he put up a year like Adrian Peterson, where he was, he put up some numbers, then maybe there'd be some trade value. But I don't know if you'd even get a 5th-round pick for him.
Yeah, I think, and I mentioned in the comment section, I said that McCoy, he was in a lot of the formations when they went 5 wide. When Allen would like to run that quarterback draw a lot of times, he was actually out there wide. And the system that Dable is trying to install in Buffalo, the Earnhardt Perkins system is one that's very concept based. So it doesn't really matter who's out there. If you understand the concept of the route, you can run that on anybody, which is why it simplifies things for the quarterback and the receivers. So that's why near the end of the year, when he was installing it and more and more new pieces were implemented into the offense, Isaiah McKenzie, Robert Foster, and all those guys, you started to see some production going on with Josh Allen toward the end of the year. Now, his completion percentage in his last 6 games were not the same as his first 6 games, true, but he was still working his way through the offense that Dable was trying to install. And that being said, going back to your point as far as Mccoy, I think he is more valuable to your team than what you would get in compensation if you did trade him. Now, that's not to say that if the Bills are 4-4, or they're not having a very good season, McCoy's not getting the touches. If there's a team out there that gets an injury to a running back and they end up calling up the Bills and say, hey, we need a guy, a la Philly trading for Jay Ajayi, something like that, maybe that could be a scenario where he's actually off this team. But for 2019, I really don't see LeSean McCoy not being a Buffalo Bill for the 2019 season.
Snarl brings up a good point in the chat. So Snarl says every big run that they had got called back by penalty. Hard to establish a run on 2nd and 20. I think that's a very valid point, man.
Snarl with the win.
Very valid point. Yeah. The Life of John brings up Ed Oliver. Yeah, let's cycle back to the draft real quick. Because,
yes.
We're looking at offense, right? And you start looking around the NFL and you see teams have named receivers. You've seen, the Browns traded for OBJ, cost them a first-round pick. Dallas traded for Cooper, cost them a first-round pick, right? So what do the Bills really need? Do they need help on defense, or do they really need the help on offense? So while don't get me wrong, I love Ed Oliver, right? I really do. And we talked about it on an episode this week. Did that episode air, Mario? I don't remember. Did that episode air where we talked about the division and the defensive line?
I believe so. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So
why are you yelling at me? I'm right here. I don't understand.
Sorry. that rotation along the front line is really, really important inside the division. Once you start looking at now, you got Bell there, right, and you got Sony Michel.
Yeah. Yep.
So that rotational across the front line gets really important. But to me, the biggest need on this defense is still strong side linebacker, right? It really is. Still strong side linebacker.
Dustin Lyons, he brings up an excellent point. If Oliver, Sweat, Hawkinson, and unusual suspects are gone, you take Devon White at 9. Mm-hmm. And we actually had a stream like this when we were talking about the linebackers that were coming out, and you mentioned a guy from the Pac-12. I can't remember what his name was, but Ben Burr-Kirvin or whatever.
Yeah.
It was like your all-name team. Paul has an all-name team every year for the draft that who he wants to draft. It's pretty hysterical. The first one was Xavier Suafilo. I remember that he was a guard that was drafted by Houston. But I mean that notwithstanding, Devon White is one of those guys where we're starting to see a transition of the linebacking core in the NFL because so many teams go to those sub packages, the nickel packages. So you're starting to see these undersized linebackers that are just speed demons all over the field. Now, would Devon White be a strong side linebacker? You put him next to Edmonds and Milano, that is terrifying. For any defense or for any offense that has to face, that is a terrifying thought. Do I think that the Bills would lunge there? I'm not really sure. I don't know. They got Milano in the 5th. They traded up to get Edmonds in the 1st. So I don't know what their thought process is when trying to get a linebacker. When Doug Whaley was here, we knew what his thought process was. I can get him 3rd round or later. I don't care. I can get a guy that's serviceable. Whaley could scout linebackers. The other 21 positions on the field, he couldn't. With linebackers, he could do. But if you think about it in that aspect, I don't know. I think if all of those 3 guys are gone, I think that's what inclines them to trade out of that pick. I don't think that they'll reach for a linebacker in that respect.
Yeah, it's. I mean, a 6 foot tall, strong side linebacker who runs a 4.4 is a terrifying notion to me, right? um, you know,
Yes.
and you're starting to see some, some words coming out about guys slipping, like Rashawn Gary's. There's been a lot of concern from I guess his med checks aren't coming back really good.
Yeah, I've heard that.
It's got a heart condition that, again, you're starting to see some teams going, well, maybe it's not something that, maybe it's not something we want to take a chance on. Devon White checks a lot of boxes for you, right? He's super, super instinctive player, but he's got a lot of the same little question marks that you had about Tremaine Edmonds, where, he gets caught up going the wrong way sometimes. And playing strong side is not going to be an advantage for him where he can kind of see the field a little bit better from strong side. I mean, maybe, right? I think that's a definitive maybe. Yeah. But I'm not really positive. Do I like Devon White? Sure. Do I expect him to be there at 9? I'll be honest with you. I think there's going to be that defensive line talent is going to go bing, bing, bing. I don't think teams are going to be jumping for QBs the way that they have been. And I mean, Devon White could be there, but I don't know if he's going to be Mark.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. If you look at not necessarily glaring holes on the defense, but you look at some guys that the Buffalo Bills could draft with the 9th pick if they decide to stay at 9. Now, if they decide to stay at 9, there are some things that are coming out. You got both you got both Hughes and Lawson coming up on contracts. So a lot of guys, in the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round, what they'll do is they'll draft the replacement of the team, of the guy that may come up for contract the next year if they don't have cap. The Bills will have cap. So it's not like they can't re-sign Shaq Lawson to a 2-year deal. It's not like they can't re-sign Lawson to a longer-term deal, depending on how he plays. It seems like Lawson's been on his contract year for about 6 years now. I mean, that's how it feels to me as a fan. So in that respect, if they don't feel that, because Lawson wasn't brought in by this regime, we have to remember that. He was not brought in by this regime. If he's not the guy that they think that they want stopping that, the offense's right side of the line, being setting the edge, stopping the run, and doing all that stuff. If he's not the guy that they want there, then they're going to try to draft his replacement in this draft at some point. Maybe at 40th, maybe later in the draft, maybe even with the 9th pick, or if they trade back and they acquire a couple more picks. Like, okay, we got our edge guy in case we can't re-sign him. We're going to have a guy in here for a year that understands our system. We can let go of Shaq Lawson with no loss to us. This regime seems to be looking at the big picture a lot, and something that we're not used to as Bills fans, which is very unique in that respect. So I don't know if they will go for a guy as far as that. You got to replace Lorenzo Alexander at some point. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So Lorenzo now at this point in his career, he's a 2-down linebacker standing up, and then he may shift down to defensive tackle on a 3rd and long. So that's the type of linebacker that he is. He's a little bit of a hybrid in that respect. And, McDermott, in the defenses that he's had, he hasn't been shy about keeping guys past their prime if they're serviceable. You think about Thomas Davis in Carolina. I thought the guy should have retired 5 years ago. He's still playing. So, in that respect, I don't know what the transition for the Bills is going to be. Could they go offense? I don't know. They went all offense in the offseason. So
yeah, we have such a limited sample size of what this organization wants to do, right? So we really, really don't know what they want to do. We saw last year they acquired multiple 1st-round picks, right? And they traded around to get where they wanted to be. So you have to kind of carry almost a similar assumption that that's going to be a target for them, right? So you start looking at teams with multiple 1st-round picks. We can add Seattle to that mix now. You've got Oakland with multiple 1st-round picks. So there's teams that, have picks that, maybe you want to get someone. Or you start looking at your current assets for this year and say, you know what, 2nd-round pick, 3rd-round pick, don't care, don't need them. So let's go ahead and sell the farm this year and get as many 1st-round picks, or let's get up to get the guys that we want. We've got guys circled on our draft board. We've got the assets. Let's just go get those guys, right? Who cares if we walk away with 3 players from this draft? Who cares? You don't have roster room for them. So go get guys that are going to make your football team, right? That's what you want to do. Go get the guys who are going to make your football team. So I really do prescribe to the fact that the Bills could trade down simply to acquire more assets, to have more leverage to move around the draft where they want to go, to make sure they leave with who they want. I don't expect them to, I don't expect them to sit and let players fall to them. They're not in the position to be able to do that. They want to win, and they've got the assets, and they don't have the need. So they can move wherever they want to get whatever they want. And the precedent was set last year that they're willing to do that, and I don't think that changes at all this year.
Well, the weird part about it that is happening in this draft that hasn't happened in a while, if you're talking about the Bills trading out with teams that have multiple picks in the first round, okay, you look at, there's 4 teams that have multiple picks in the first round. You got Seattle, Green Bay, Oakland, and the Giants. Well, the Giants already have a pick in front of the Bills, so they're already out. So unless you're trying to trade back into the round with a bunch of picks, as far as the Giants go, because Giants, I still don't know what Gettleman's doing there in New York. So we'll have to try to figure that out in the draft. Hopefully this draft will tell us more about what they're trying to do. But then that just leaves Seattle, Green Bay, and Oakland, okay? Usually you trade up with a team to try to skip another team to get a quarterback. When you think of Seattle, Green Bay, and Oakland, they already have them. They already have their quarterbacks.
Right.
Russell Wilson just signed a Bryce Harper type, comparable to the NFL type deal. So they're not going to. So the teams that do have multiple picks, just like the Bills, if they were going to trade up, they would take a player that the Bills would probably want, and they would probably need. Right. So, I mean, Seattle just traded away Clark. I mean, people were saying in Buffalo that maybe the Bills could probably get him. So it's a type of player that they know that, okay, we can draft his replacement. We don't have to pay him a bunch of money. But that's the same type of player that maybe the Bills are going after, so they won't make that trade. So other than trading back into the first round with teams that they already have familiarity with, like Carolina, like the Eagles, like teams of that nature, I don't know if they're really in a spot to trade back. I mean, like I said, I would trade up with Tampa today, right now. And I even proposed, and I even said it on the feed. I said, listen, if the Bills decide to bundle 9th and the 40th pick, the first 2 round picks, trade up for Gerald McCoy in the 5th pick, and then so this is only contingent if Josh Allen is still on the board at 5, which I don't foresee him being on the board at 5. If he's still there at 5, you make that deal, because then you get 2 quality players, and Tampa Bay gets to draft their entire class because they don't have any cap room. So that would be my my scenario for the Bills. I don't have them trading back. I have them trading up.
So we've got a lot of comments flowing in about Clowney, right? So and that's absolutely possible, 100% possible. We've talked about Clowney. Actually, I'm thinking of the last live stream we talked about Clowney, if I'm not crazy.
We did.
Everybody, an episode about it.
Houston's 23 now, just to let you know. Houston's sitting at 23. They hold 2 second-round picks. They have the 54th and 55th back-to-back picks, which is very interesting and very intriguing for a team that may want to trade Clowney and get his replacement. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no. It's in Bills fan. I want to cycle back to something because Bills fan 7883 brought it up in the chat. Why would you need McCoy if Oliver would be there? Well, that's the whole thing. You can fill the need at DT and still get it. It's one and right. So you fill the need at DT and you get whatever else you want. Then you can get another edge rusher, right? So you can fill 2 needs with one. That's why that deal makes a little bit of sense. Now, granted, Gerald McCoy's not the player that he was 5 years ago, but I'll still take Gerald McCoy. You're only asking him to play 50% of the snaps anyway with the defensive line rotation that they normally run. So, I mean, you're not asking him.
You're going to extend his career. You're definitely going to extend his career. And the fact is, do I want Oliver at 9? The answer is yes. Mm-hmm. Every day of the week, twice on Sunday. However, if you're able to get a defensive tackle that has been proven, put him next to Star Lotulelei, and get Josh Allen, that would trump. And getting McCoy and Allen would trump just getting Oliver for me.
Right.
And then you don't know who's going to fall to 40. That's the problem of it. You're banking on getting McCoy and Allen, but you don't know if you get Oliver at 9, who's going to be there at 40 for you? Really, who's going to be? Unless you're just going to throw the farm at Carolina to get back up to 16 and draft whoever falls there that you want. I mean, that's always an option too. So,
and specific to Clowney, right? So Clowney is going to cost you about 16 mil this year, and that's all that you're getting because he's going to be a free agent, right? Could you franchise tag him again? Sure. Do you want to? Probably not.
No.
Right? Players don't really love the franchise tag thing, and that's just a short-term solution.
Mm-hmm.
And, is Clowney a guy that you could just get on the free agent market next year? Yeah, I mean, you could. You could take the chance now, right, to try and get him in here for a year and try and win him over. But the fact remains that when a player starts the season on the franchise tag, you can't negotiate you can't sign him to a contract extension. You can negotiate with his agent a contract extension. You can't sign anything, right? A lot of things change over the course of the season. So you're not buying yourself a very big window in order to get an extension done when you're trading for a guy who's on, who's on the money that Clowney's going to be on, right? So I get the thought process of going out and getting a player like Clowney because he's one hell of a football player. You could do it, right? You got the money to do it. Or you could just bide your time a little bit and maybe he has free agency. And then maybe you sign him to a $130 million contract like he's doing, right? I mean, maybe you do that without having to give up the draft asset. I mean, it's up to you what you prefer to do. But the window to sign Clowney to extension is just kind of small there.
Yeah.
So that would give me some pause,
Well, I mean, Paul, we talk about a lot of times with going on with the team, like if the Bills went heavy at offensive line this offseason. I mean, we know that's going on. And we came to the conclusion that, okay, they signed all these offensive linemen. They don't need to draft one. In such a defensive-heavy draft, they're going to go defense. Now, that kind of gives us a telling sign of the things that we've seen, covering the NFL and covering the Bills and seeing the draft as much as we've seen it. Does the fact that they haven't signed or the fact that they haven't tried to trade for Clowney or haven't signed Ezekiel Ansah, does that also tip their hand as far as what they're looking to try to get in the NFL draft this year?
I don't know.
So I'm just saying, we talk about the players they do get. What about the players they don't? Does that tip the hand of the Bills?
So, Midnight Hood brings up Ziggy Ansah, right?
Yeah.
So the fact that TJ Yeldon signed right now surprised me, right? Yes. Because this is normally like the desert of free agents. Nobody signs right now because teams don't have a need to sign anybody. Why sign a player right now? You're going to sign a player to a position that you're trying to take off your board. I'm not really sure that's the case with Buffalo, right? So Ziggy Ansah is going to go to a team that misses out on the defensive end that they had circled on their board, right? And Ansah's medicals can't be good. Like, I know it's an assumption to believe that, but the truth is he'd be signed otherwise, right? Maybe he was looking for too much money. Maybe he wanted more years. Maybe he was looking for a 3-year deal instead of the 1-year deal with an option year that he was getting offered every year, right? Maybe there's a lot that goes into it. But Ansah's going to be the consolation prize for somebody that doesn't get the edge rusher that they want, or somebody who drafts an edge rusher in the 3rd round from the MAC, and they're like, well, let's get somebody else here just to make sure that we don't have to start this kid day one. So that's what Ansah's going to be right now. And could they Bills go out and get him? Yeah, sure. Ansah would be a fine piece, but again, he doesn't fix you long term at all.
No.
You're doing kind of the same thing with Clowney. You're getting him here for a year or two and saying, okay, let's see how this goes.
Well, the thing with Ansah, I know, not so much Clowney, but with Ansah, the longer that it goes toward the draft, the more it drops what you have to sign him for. That's the beauty of this whole thing. If you would have signed him 4 days out of free agency, from then till now, what it's going to cost to sign him is going to be significantly lower because he doesn't have a job. So, like you said it perfectly. If the team does not get the edge rusher that they want, they may sign him, depending on the medicals. Now, each team always puts their own set of physical, whatever physical they have for the player, it's very specific to some teams. We've seen trades that are nixed because certain players don't even pass the physicals that the teams that they're going to have. So, stop it, Paul. I can see the chat too, buddy.
What?
What was it? Go ahead. I'll let you say it. Go ahead. I already seen it in the chat.
It was brought up.
Okay, go ahead.
What about Buffalo trading with Miami? What about it?
I'm gonna let you sit there.
What do you got to say?
Are they trading a player or a pick?
No. They're gonna trade. Buffalo's gonna trade.
Down to 13.
Yeah. That's fine. Whatever circumstance, you're gonna trade with Miami. Okay, doesn't matter. Player pick doesn't matter.
I'm gonna immediately dismiss it because it's the division, but you never say why I'm gonna dismiss it. All right.
I don't.
Now,
no.
Let me just say this real quick. The Arizona Cardinals, number 1 pick overall. Okay, they're expected. People have been rumoring that they're going to take Kyler Murray. Some people say they're not going to take Kyler Murray. Whatever. What does that do? Well, a lot of people are mocking Nick Bosa to San Francisco. What Arizona needs to be cognizant of is the fact that whoever they don't pick at 1 could possibly be in their division the entire career of whoever they pick. So if you're going to pick Kyler Murray at 1, just know Nick Bosa is going to be chasing him around 2 games a year for the next 10 years. I'm just saying. If that's your thought process in that. Now, as far as trades go, I keep forgetting the guy that was he was the general manager of the Colts when they drafted John Elway back in 1983. Now, he had a certain price for teams to trade up to the first pick. Now, listen. No, Paul, just listen to this, okay?
It wasn't even, my birthday hadn't even happened yet. I wasn't even a year old.
Ernie Accorsi, like, that's what his name was. Ernie Accorsi said this, and it holds true because you got to face these guys twice a year. He said that he had a certain price for John Elway if you want to trade up to the first pick, but that price was increased if you were within the division. Because he said, listen, can you imagine having to play Elway twice a year? That's just madness. If you're going to trade a guy, if you're going to trade back to 13 with Miami, and Miami's going to jump to 9, just know that that player that you're giving Miami, you're going to have to contend with twice a year. A top 10 player you're going to give to Miami to contend with the rest of the year. That's all I'm saying. Why my reservations with trading in the division are like that. Okay? That's why you see a lot of teams, they don't even really trade within the conference because they don't have to face these guys in the playoffs. Now, the trade that happened when the Bills traded back with Kansas City, that manifested because McDermott and Reed had a relationship. That's the only reason that trade consummated. But that usually doesn't happen. So fine, Paul. I gave you my excuse. You can get mad at me now. It's fine.
Well, no, I mean you bring up a good point. You know, you take a look at the number 1 overall pick and possibly being Kyler Murray, and you have San Francisco immediately behind him. So you're basically gift wrapping the best player inside the division, best player in the draft, basically, to San Francisco, or you're going to allow San Francisco to trade that to the highest bidder. Right? Yeah, that's the perils of divisional football, right? You do have to take care of your division first, and that means keeping players away from teams that you don't want them to go to. Andy Isabella and Noah Fant to the Patriots scare the hell out of me.
Oh God!
Like the thought of those two scare the hell out of me. And Miami, just as an example, if Murray goes at 1 to Arizona, which would blow my mind, but a lot of people are saying it's going to happen. Not that anybody got last year right.
Oh God!
But the fact still remains: if Murray goes 1, Rosen's available for whatever they can get, right? Because his value is immediately compromised. So Miami could say, well, we got a 3rd round pick. Got a 3rd and a 4th next year. Okay, how close to the dance does that get us? And that might be it. So a lot of stuff can happen. A lot. But people saying that cornerback is a need here, I don't get it. I don't get it. Cornerback.
Oh no.
I don't get where corner is a need for Buffalo. Defensive end continues to be the area of need for me. Strong side, So you need a pass rush. You got to have a strong side linebacker. And I can't believe that I'm saying defense over offense, right? I can't believe that I've come to a point in my life where I'm okay with the Bills taking a defensive player over an offensive player given a 6-win season, right? But that's where I am right now.
And it's weird that you're taking that stance in the fact that the Bills had a very formidable and stout defense last year. They did. They were. They were able to do things last year. If they would have had a little bit of offense, we would be talking about them drafting in the mid to late teens. Okay, that's why I agree with Bean's sentiment when he talks about we're not supposed to be drafting ninth. Our team's better than drafting ninth right now. So, but I think what's swaying you, Paul, and a lot of people in my conspiracy theory all the time, they did all of these moves in the offseason to address the offense. Now, if they didn't sign any wide receivers, we could say they're going wide receiver. If they didn't sign any linemen, we could say they're going linemen. But all of this smoke screen that's going on, and I'm a victim of it myself. You hear all these reports and you see all these things. You say, okay, what haven't they addressed? Well, they signed they signed Jordan Phillips. That was it. But that was a guy that Dennis Hickey and Dennis Locke drafted out of Miami. They were definitely going to re-sign him because they like the guy. They think he's a good player. I think he's a stout defensive tackle. But with the way they play the rotation there, you got to have more than just Harrison Phillips, Jordan Phillips, and Star Lotulelei up there in the front line. You got to have more guys than that. And even though Lorenzo Alexander is going to factor in the rotation, you got to get somebody else. And I don't know if that guy is at 40. A lot of people say that guy's at 9. A lot of people say they can trade back and still get that guy. So if Murray goes 1, everything gets thrown off. But if Murray doesn't go 1, everything should play out the way it should play out in the draft as far as the players that are going to be selected.
I know that, again, there's a lot of chat about, well, you got to get your defensive, your speed rusher at the beginning of the draft. That's where speed rushers often are.
Yes.
There's a guy that plays for Eastern Michigan. So those of you who are looking for sort of draft value in those later rounds, even maybe as late as the 4th or the 5th round, there's a kid by the name of Max Crosby from Eastern Michigan. 6'5", 255, right? Ran a 4.6 at the combine. And this is a guy who is a pass rush specialist. Now, his stats are going to look a little bit inflated because he was a guy that was on the field at all times, right? He was 100% on the field for Eastern Michigan. He was their best defensive player, so he was consistently on the field. But if you brought him in just to a pass rush role, right, and really that's all you told him to do, like, okay, we're going to bring you in passing downs, and that's all we want you to do, this guy's going to be a real steal for you in the later rounds. He's nasty. He works the whole time he's on the field, but his stats look a little bit inflated because, again, he was in the MAC and he was on the field a little bit out of position with some of the responsibilities that they asked him. But if you're looking for somebody that's going to be a little bit later in the draft, Max Crosby from Eastern Michigan is a name to know. And again, you even talk about some of the guys from UB. Obviously, I don't think Buffalo's in play for a QB formerly from UB, but I mean, there's most certainly in play for Anthony Johnson, and they're most certainly in play for Gil Hodge. Gil Hodge, Khalil Hodge. Excuse me. Certainly in play for Khalil Hodge, and Anthony Johnson's probably going to be a second-round pick, and Buffalo certainly is a possibility for him. Max Crosby from Eastern Michigan. Buffalo's still going to be in play for a defensive end help late in the draft, so he definitely falls into play. Khalil Hodge might not even be drafted. He won't. That's the speed concern for him. But again, the NFL draft process is the only time that anybody measures your 40 time. Who cares? What did Terrell Suggs run in the 40? No one cares. No one cares.
It was probably a 4.5, but I mean, we're not going to split hairs here. But that being said, as far as I want to get to JC's comment because he hit a really great comment, and it echoes something that you said a couple of years ago, Paul. But as far as being a Bills fan and going into the draft this season, I'm at the point where I don't know if I've been drinking the Kool-Aid or what's going on, but whatever they do, wherever they route that they decide to pick, I'm gonna trust it. And I haven't been able to say that about a Bills draft and a Bills regime before, at least in recent years. But they seem to have their pulse on the big picture, what's going on. So if they take a certain guy, if it's not the same guy that I wanted them to pick, I'm not going to get as upset about it as I was like I don't know the EJ Manuel draft or the Sammy Watkins draft. You know what I mean? I'm not going to get upset because I could see that they have a clear vision of how they want to build this team, and they seem to be doing it in a way that it's very organized and regimented, and they're trying to say, like, we need our guys in here to fit our system, and that's how it's going to go. And I really think that's how Bean and McDermott pitched it to Pagula, and they're like, listen, this is how we're going to run it. Just trust us. And I do trust wherever they decide to go. If they decide to go that route, I trust it. So, but I wanted to get to JC's comment. He said, is there a chance we use Duke Williams at tight end or like a Jimmy Graham big slot? I think he's referencing like an H-back. I remember you said maybe 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, you said, hey, bring T.O. back. Play him as an H-back. If you don't have a tight end.
Oh, dude, this was 5 years ago.
Was it 5? Okay. All right. I said they all get I'm old now. You got to remember that. You got to let me know. But the thing is, they could do that. They could say, listen, we already have a guy that we're earmarking to play in that H-back role, and it's Duke Williams. That's a great – I thought it was a great point that he brought that up where, you know, they picked up Duke Williams really early in the offseason, and then everyone forgot about him. You know what I mean? They're talking about John Brown. They're talking about Cole Beasley, and they're talking about all these other moves that they made, but they picked up Duke very early. He could be one of those big-body guys.
And we don't really know what the Bills' plan on offense is at all, right?
Exactly.
Like, we don't truthfully know. Like, are they going to run the ball 45 times a game? Well, you're fooling me right now. I do want to put out there that Duke is 6'2", right? So from the scope of tight ends, not exactly what you're looking for, right? But when he's on the field, you know they're in a passing set, right? If he's in that position. And if you're looking for a matchup, yeah, sure, why not? I mean, he doesn't fit the mold of your typical tight end, right? But a lot of your successful receivers don't fit the mold of your typical wide receiver, you know? So I get it, right? I definitely get it. I don't know if Duke makes the team, to be honest with you, but do they waive him and put him on the practice squad? He's got practice squad eligibility.
He does.
You know, why not?
I don't. It's a guy that's kind of got lost in the shuffle. I mean, the Bills signed all these offensive linemen. They could take an offensive lineman. They signed all these wide receivers. They could take a wide receiver. People are still high on Metcalf. Like they have a stable of wide receivers now that could play in the type of system that Daboll's trying to institute. They could play it and be very formidable. I mean, are they going to be 2018 Patrick Mahomes with Tyreek Hill and all those weapons? No, they're not going to be. That's not the type of system they want to run. They want to try to beat you defensively, run down, shorten the game, make high percentage throws, and beat you that way. I mean, that's what I've seen going on, what I've observed over the last few weeks of the year. So, I mean, if that ends up playing out for them, great. But if it doesn't, we're going to be sitting here next year talking about all the improvements they have to make.
Yeah, true story. True story. I did see a comment in the chat that talked about Jalen Ferguson in the third. That was Trek Reviewer. Okay. So Jalen Ferguson in the third. Here's the thing about Jalen Ferguson, right?
I'm listening.
He's seen as a value pick for a lot of teams, right? I don't know if he makes it to the third. Jerry Tillery in the second, I understand. But I don't know if Jalen Ferguson makes it to the third. Once you start getting talk on, well, he could fit here, he fit here, he fit here, he fit here. If analysts are telling you that he could fit in 20 out of 32 teams, then teams know the third round ain't a possibility for this guy, right? I mean, that's he's a player that I could see immediately fitting in Jacksonville, immediately fitting a rush need for Seattle, immediately filling in a rush need for another team that needs to reinvent their defense, Atlanta, Kansas City. Like he's a fit in a lot of teams at a value price. I don't know if Jalen Ferguson makes it. If he makes it to the third, he won't make it very deep in the. I know Buffalo's got a top third round pick, but again, that may be a pick that Buffalo looks at and says, you know what, let's trade out. We'll get more value next year, right? I don't know if Jalen Ferguson makes it.
You see what Jason Hawkins just said?
Yeah, what's the take on Whiteside? You want to see a grown man cry? Arcega Whiteside. You have your big receivers in this draft, right? So you have AJ Brown, DK Metcalf. A lot of people talk about Hakeem Butler, N'Keal Harry. JJ Arcega-Whiteside is a little bit of a different animal, right? To me, he's top 3 wide receivers in this. Love Arcega-Whiteside. Contested catches, he is your guy. Here's the weird thing about the draft this year, right? When it comes to wide receivers. You have DK Metcalf, who ran a lot of silo routes. For those of you that don't know what silos are, basically they just used him to run in a straight line. So either he was running curl routes or he was running goes, right? He was just really staying in that path. That was it. Arcega-Whiteside, on the other hand, was all over, ran a full route tree, can body guys out. Again, had one of the best contested catches ranked among PFF. And kid's a beast, man. He's just a beast. He's quick. You can put him anywhere. He can immediately start outside for you, which, again, I know you brought in John Brown. I know you have Cole Beasley. I know you have Robert Foster. Robert Foster is still the tallest wide receiver on this receiver group, as amazing as that is to say. But a guy like Arcega-Whiteside really opens up your offense. 9 is too early. Right, you're going to have to trade back in to get him. You're probably going to have to trade back and you probably get him in the 20s, right? But he totally changes the scope of what this offense could be because he's not only a big guy who can get down the field, man, but he's going to win contested catches. And I don't really know if Buffalo has a contested catch guy. I think they bring in Duke Williams to kind of see and fill that role, or at least try to see if he can fill that role. But outside of that, I'm not sure the Bills have a guy that'll stomp on a herd of small children to get to a football. And Arcega-Whiteside's back there. I like Arcega-Whiteside.
Where's he from?
Stanford.
Where's that located?
Doesn't matter.
Pac-12 runs mostly pro-style offenses, therefore they have to run the full route tree. That's why he's so highly coveted. Other than your man crush, that's why he's so highly coveted.
He's good. What do you want?
He's phenomenal. I at 9, I agree with you. I don't want to take him at 9. But you know what? I really think that due to the drafts that they have had in the past, and I know I'm going to go back to this team, if Metcalf and or Whiteside are there at 16, I think Carolina jumps on him. Because that's the mold of wide receiver that they've been drafting over the years.
Yeah, but they just drafted DJ Moore. They've got.
And where was he this year? Where was he? That's all I'm saying. That's all. Marty Herney was there when they picked Benjamin. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. Yeah, you're right.
Could be that.
I see John Calvin ask about Arcega-Whiteside's 40 time. Were you trying to ask that? Yeah, Whiteside is slow. So Whiteside at his pro day. Put up a better number than I thought. 4.49 at his pro day.
That's not slow.
I thought that's not slow, right?
I mean,
it's not slow.
He's not gonna.
His three cone was good. So those are the two things you really want to look for, right? Look at that 3 cone. Look at the 40 time if you're trying to get a real quick read on a wide receiver. Another guy who's gonna put up good numbers, and you're probably gonna hear the Bills connected to him, is Debo Samuel, because he's gonna be there in the second round.
Indeed.
I'm keeping a little distance from Debo Samuel for a couple reasons. Okay. One is I just don't like the way he catches the football. He looks like a drop machine to me. Lets the ball get in on him. That's like my there's like offensive line coaches who will say you can't teach a waist bender. As soon as you get a offensive line or a tackle that bends at the waist, some offensive line coaches like you can't coach that out of a guy. You can't get a wide receiver to catch the ball away from their body if they haven't done so already, right? So he lets the ball get in on a little too much for me. So I'm kind of out on Debo Samuel. Admittedly, I'm not objective with him because I'm just kind of out on him.
Yeah,
I don't like what I see. The drops are a problem for me. So again, you're going to hear his name connected. I just say tread lightly here because again, I don't really know if the Bills want to bring in another guy like, and I'm going to say it, and a lot of people might get mad at me. Zay Jones, I believe, mentions it. Zay Jones in the comment section, 100% the same. Zay lets the ball get in on him so much. Debo Samuel's very, very similar. So I'm glad you brought that up. I believe you're 100% correct.
Dustin Lines, too early for a bagel with butter? No. Plain bagel? Never. Never too early.
Yeah, I want to remind you guys, if you're going to be in the area, we're going to be doing live draft coverage of 34 Rush at Batavia Down. So we'll be there covering both nights or the first 2 nights of the draft. Obviously, we're going to be doing 5 hours of draft coverage, so getting up and shaking hands and kissing babies. Although I don't know why you bring your baby to a casino. I don't know if that's really a great possibility.
I used to work at a casino,
awesome.
Paul. They do.
Meet a lot of you guys.
I used to work at a casino. People bring their babies in. I don't know why.
Really?
Yes. It's a vacation. A lot of the staycations will go to the to the casino.
I gotcha. Kawan West brings up N'Keal Harry is highly underestimated. I agree. But the weird thing about N'Keal Harry is he is the easiest wide receiver to read in this draft because he's if you take a look at like from a mold perspective, right? He's not going to be a yards after the catch guy. Don't ask him to be. Not going to happen, right? He's going to get decent separation, right? He's going to be able to go get you the football, right? I mean, that's what he does really well. But don't ask him to catch and run. Not his strength, right? Don't ask him to stretch the field. Not his strength. You're looking at a guy who's going to fit the mold of somebody like Kelvin Benjamin, right? He's going to have to muscle guys out the way, and he's not going to be yards after the catch, right? I like N'Keal Harry. If that's what you're looking for, if you need a guy who's going to body up, if that's what you're looking for, he's your guy. Very clear, you know exactly what you're getting with him. But he's not a yak monster. Don't expect it.
I feel about him the way you feel about Whiteside.
Okay, really?
So I am very. I would not be upset if the Bills decided to go that route. But like I said, I mean, it's a wide receiver. I mean, I don't know if they're gonna try to do that. I mean, all this chatter of the NFL Network and all these other people talking about, oh, they have the worst receiving core in the NFL. No, they don't. They really don't. For what they're going to try to do next year, I just can't wait for that first slant that Beasley's going to try to catch coming in at 350 miles an hour. It's going to be phenomenal. He's going to what's Beasley going to wear? What number is Beasley going to wear? That's pretty interesting to me.
I have to mention, Big Spence mentions if they trade Zay, they will be left with only 4 slot receivers. That's an awesome comment. You do have to start looking at who you're going to put on the outside of this offense, right? Like, that's what you need. You have to start looking from the outside in.
Noah Fant.
Stop it. Noah Fant.
Got him.
I do. Let's see. John Calvin, doesn't Hakeem Butler run better routes than N'Keal Harry? I don't know about that, man. Here's the deal. You have an ASU offense versus because Hakeem Butler goes to Penn State, right? I'm not crazy thinking that he goes to Penn State.
Iowa.
Goes to Iowa
State.
Iowa State. Then ignore what I was about to say.
Butler?
It's irrelevant. Never mind. Yeah.
Iowa State. Yeah, take your drink. I think I will too.
It is Iowa, isn't it? Okay.
State.
So,
Iowa State.
What conference is that in, Mario?
Okay. Sure.
What conference?
Exactly.
Oh, okay. You're like, hold on, let me wind up the Google machine.
It's got a crank on it. Yeah, I got to wind it up. That's what she said.
So Butler is heralded around this class, right? But again, I think that's a little bit more of a size thing from a prototypical standpoint. It's a little bit more what most teams find to be prototypical size. Do I love him? I mean, I like Arcega-Whiteside a lot more. So again, personally, I'm just not being objective about Hakeem Butler. I take N'Keal Harry over Hakeem Butler, but again, that's based off the needs of the Bills. Other teams aren't going to see it that way, right? That's what this all is. If I'm looking at who's going to fit the Bills right now, I look across the Bills receiver corps. I have Zay Jones who runs a 4.5. I have Robert Foster who runs a 4.3. I've got John Brown who runs a 4.4. I've got Cole Beasley who doesn't matter what he runs. He's not running 40 yards in a straight line. And then N'Keal Harry fits a need for me that I don't have, and that's a big body guy. Hakeem Butler is good. I like Hakeem Butler. Little concerned about drops. That was a little bit of an issue there, but again, you're looking at quarterback play. This is not good, right? So
yeah,
you can make some excuses there, but I like N'Keal Harry over Hakeem Butler again, but I'm looking at perspective from the.
Well, I mean, no, that's what we always bring it up all the time. We do when we do the draft talk. We start bringing up, teams usually have. You said it was 15 to 18 first. They grade guys as first rounders, like 15 to 18 that are on their board. So, a player that when guys trade back into the first round, that's what happens. So, I can't remember who did Minnesota trade with. I'm going to test your memory here now. Who did Minnesota end up trading with to get back into the first round to get Teddy Bridgewater? Do you remember that at all or no?
Yeah, so Minnesota traded with, well, there was a 32nd pick.
Yeah.
You got him with the last pick in the first round, so that would have been whoever the
Saints.
hell won the Super Bowl that year. So I'm thinking Seattle?
Seattle? So, my point being is this. They do that because the need of the team coming in is not the same as the need of the team trading out. So,
yeah.
So you have different guys on your board all the time. So when it comes to that, like you were talking about wide receivers, you may not like him for the Bills, but you may like him for all these other teams that may fall through. And that's when guys, they say guys miss on him. Well, a lot of people will say, why didn't the Bills trade up and get Khalil Mack in 2014? Well, that was the height of the cold front. That was when they had, Mario Williams, Kyle Williams, Marcel Darius, and Jerry Hughes were running the show up front there. So why would you trade up for a defensive end when you already have all those guys? It didn't make any sense. So in that respect, it's all about, you said we don't draft for need. Really? Then why do you have a draft at all? Just throw all these guys and just pick them all. Like, who do you want? You know what I mean? So you have to fulfill some of those needs. The top 10 picks and the last 10 picks. The last 10 picks are only looking for a guy that can get them over the hump. So those guys that draft maybe 23 to 32, they're looking for that one player to get them over the hump. The first top 10 picks are looking for somebody to get them in the door. Those middle picks are always the worst picks. Where the Bills used to draft, remember they would go 8-8, 7-9, 7-9. You know what I mean? They would be in the teens, and they couldn't get any quality players, and they didn't have the draft capital to trade up to get anybody else. So that's why the progression that we've gone through in the last couple of years have been such that, oh, sweet, they're actually getting really talented guys, and they're going to help their team win. So it's actually refreshing to see that. But that's some of the things that happen with those players. Someone said Starlo Tulele looks like a homeless guy.
Yeah. Bills fans aren't in love with Starlo Tulele because he obviously got the biggest cap hit on the team, and he was your big ticket acquisition. And that's not a sexy position to play.
Nope.
Right?
Nope.
And also, he wasn't on the field for 80% of the snaps, but that's a coaching decision, right? The Bills really rotated that front line all season, and that was something that I really, really liked about who was it? It was who was the DC that just constantly had rotation? Schwartz. Schwartz was phenomenal at defensive line rotation, right?
He was.
That was a real big strength for him, and that's something that might draw guys to want to come to Buffalo when you only have to play 60% of the snaps.
Well, extend your career. It definitely
Yeah.
extends your career. So you look at a guy like, and I know he may just be in his own category. If you look at Kyle Williams, in any other defense, he may not have played up to this age.
Mm-hmm.
But he probably could play next year. That's the thing. In this style of defense and how they rotate, Williams probably could have played another year if they wanted him to. I mean, that's why. That's the only reason why I floated the idea of a Gerald McCoy trade coming to Buffalo, because it would extend his career maybe 2 years longer than it would be if he was playing 70% of the snaps. It's that tough of a league that if you don't, it seems like now if you don't rotate guys, you're at a disadvantage because those guys are going to be dead by third down. Cool. All right. Glad we had this talk.
Sorry, I was just putting something. Putting something in the chat.
All right.
I saw Cameron Davis mention an edge rusher from Clemson. But to be honest, I'm a little scared of any player from Clemson. Right? I get gun shy with it. It's a personal thing. I think most Bills fans should take it personal at this point. That this is any player that you draft from Clemson will miss a season to injury. It's going to happen, right? Just right out of the gate. That one scares me a little bit. I like Farrell. I'm not really sure if he's a fit for Buffalo, but again, you take a look at McDermott run defenses, right? And the defensive ends aren't often built on speed. Actually, Jerry Hughes is a little bit of an outlier there. When you take a look at what he did in Carolina, normally across his defensive line, nobody's in the top 10 for sacks, right? But you'll have a bunch of guys that are in the top 20. You have 2 to 3 guys that are in the top 20 or top 25 in sack production, and it's pretty even across the line. But with that being said, and Mario, you and I have talked about this. This is not Sean McDermott's defense.
No, it's Leslie's.
This is Leslie Frazier's defense.
It's right. Leslie Frazier, former defensive back of the '85 Bears. Remember I mentioned that to you before?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
several
times. Yep.
You hate when I bring up stuff that's like past your relevance, time of relevance. It's just pretty funny. Mm-hmm. It's run by Leslie Frazier, but you gotta imagine that McDermott has some input in what goes on with his team, with his defense. So I mean that just lets you know, because I think what McDermott tried to do when he came to Buffalo was he was trying to get someone with credibility that can run his defense so he can focus on the offense more, because that's what his overall scope is. He's the head coach now. He's not just running one side of the team. He has to run the entire team. So he has to know what's going on. I think he wanted to put somebody over there like Frazier, who's because I mean, you know this, Paul. I was giving Leslie Frazier head coaching, my endorsement for him to be a head coach this year. So I really think he may be gone next year. That's the thing. I mean, I don't know what's going on, but that notwithstanding, he wanted somebody over there to run the defense that was competent enough to do that, so he can go check on the offense and see what was going on over there. And it seems like for the time, it seems to be working out well for the Bills. But I mean, I just love how I threw the Florida State thing in the chat for you. You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks for that. I saw Lester Frisbee ask if the Bills are still considering trading Shaq Lawson. I mean, that's definitely still a possibility, right? So you take a look at what Shaq Lawson brings to the table. He's still got a year on. He's got his current year. And then he does have the 5th-year option, which I haven't heard the Bills declining, but I can't say I've heard the Bills pick up either, right? And they have to make a decision on what they're going to do there. And again, the only thing with the 5th-year option is it's guaranteed against injury, but that's only if Shaq Lawson is going to miss time into the 5th year. Okay, so if Shaq Lawson breaks his leg like Matt Milano at the end of the season, if that injury is going to cost him time in the next season, then that 5th year becomes immediately guaranteed. So when you trade a player like Shaq Lawson, right, is he going to cost you a lot to trade? No, not really. He costs you a little bit. He's going to cost you about signing bonus 1.4. It costs you about 1.4 mil to trade. Okay, saves you about 1.4 or on salary. So it's instead of him costing you 2.8, you're going to save 1.4 by trade in cap. But again, money's not really a big deal right now. You're not too concerned about money. You're trading him because, again, he's going to have that fifth-year option in 2020, which I think is going to be around $10 million, and that's asking a lot for a team to pick up because Shaq Lawson would not make $10 million for a season. If he was a free agent right now, he would not make, or even at the beginning of next season, he would not get a one-year deal for $10 million. He would not get a 2 for 20, a 3 for 30, a 4 for 40. It's not going to happen. So trading him, again, that option's a little bit more than what most teams would want to pay for him. Again, does that really matter? I guess it depends on the team. I don't really know if there's a market for Shaq Lawson because, again, you're only getting him for a year. He's affordable now, but that fifth-year option, which is transferable, another team could hold on to that fifth-year option. I just don't really foresee that being of value to that. If his fifth-year option was at like $6 million, yeah, but that's not where he's going to be. That fifth-year option is going to put him about 10. So I just don't know if there's really a market for Shaq. I could be wrong. I could be reading that wrong, but I just don't think there's really a market.
Do you think the Bills would run into the same problem that Houston's having right now, trying to trade Clowney?
Yeah. Just from a dollar standpoint, you mean?
Yeah,
or because it's the last year of the deal?
Last year of the deal. Trying to sign a guy not knowing if he's going to be there the following year. You know what I mean? It's almost like when those guys get traded in hockey at the trade deadline. They're like, I don't know if we're going to have him the next year, but if we, they trade him and you get a conditional third-round pick, but they say, oh, if you re-sign him, then that becomes a second-round pick to us. You know what I mean? I don't know why more teams don't do that. As far as
actually, Mikey Mike just put something. They put a good thought in the chat. It's a Shaq plus a late-round pick for Gerald McCoy, which I mean, Gerald McCoy's free for Tampa to trade. And they get another edge rusher, and yes, it's only for a year, but they free themselves up. They'd add a player that they could retain if they really wanted to. It's actually not that bad an idea, to be honest with you. Tampa's got to be in business to get rid of McCoy.
Well, yeah, because you still have the forgotten man. You still have Murphy. We always forget about him.
You got to be on the field to be remembered, buddy.
I agree, Paul. Why are you yelling at me again? Hate it when you do that.
Yeah.
Just another reminder to everybody, we're going to be at Thurman's 34 Rush, Batavia Downs, for the first 2 days of the draft. We're going to cover the first 3 rounds. It's going to be very exciting. You could see Paul just get mad at me for trying to make stupid innuendos during the draft, like we did last year with Bradley Chubb. He got so mad at me; it was pretty hysterical. But that notwithstanding, you guys should try to make it out. If you're in the area and you want to go out there, it's completely Bill-centric coverage. But if you can't make it in, and you're not, you can't make it to the 34 Rush, we are going to be broadcasting it on our YouTube channel. We got the green light to do that. So, it's of course Big Spence comes in. I say it, Spence gets it. It's pretty funny, but. I mean, that being said, you guys will watch us do the draft. It's going to be pretty hilarious. We got a great panel, and you guys, I feel you'll enjoy it really well. So, because it's all Bill-centric. It's like, how does the first pick affect them? How does the third pick affect them? Oh, this team traded back into the 7th pick. How does that affect the Bills? So it's for you guys, basically. So
it is a lot of fun.
It is. Dynamite dropping, Monty.
Yeah, right.
That broadcast school is really paying off.
So Dustin asks, chances we draft a Williams? Not too bad. You got Jonah Williams.
Jonah, Quinnen, Greedy.
Yeah.
Let me bring up a name to
you out there.
I mean, did anyone mention Christian Wilkins yet? I know you don't like him, but he's from Clemson.
Yeah, no more Clemson.
No more? That's it? Okay, all right, good.
No more Clemson. No more.
He's so mad.
No more.
He's so mad.
I just can't do it.
Who's better, Shaq or Murphy? John Calvin. Who's better, Shaq or Murphy? Well, I think Shaq because he's on the field more.
Yeah, Murphy,
You got to
Murphy
play.
has,
You said it perfectly. You were joking, but it's perfect. You got to be on the field to contribute.
yeah, agreed. You got to be able to play. Yeah, we can talk about this as much as we want, right? Of how a player profiles out. The best ability is availability. Period. The end. Any team's going to take the healthy player versus the guy who's got injury problems, right? That's how it is. That's how it rolls. Let's see here. This offseason, guess who brings it up? When we take a look at this draft, and it's going to be hard to get an immediate reaction to what the Bills actually got in the draft, because, again, you don't even know how many of these guys are going to make the team. A lot of these free agent signings that we spend a lot of time talking about, with the rosters being at 90, the Bills are actually almost there if you consider what's being added in the draft class. So the fact remains is that there's going to be a lot of guys that you've become fairly familiar with that aren't going to be on this football team. And that's a very strange place to be as Bills fans. We haven't been in that position before.
Yeah.
It's going to be a strange position to be in, especially since we don't really have to be too concerned about what the salary cap ramifications are. Just because the guy's making a lot of money doesn't guarantee him a roster spot. And this is the first season that I can remember in a long time that I can say that. Money isn't a big deal. It's really not.
No, it really isn't. You look at the Bills, they got, 10 picks, 73 players currently on the roster. With the exception of Austin Prohl, their 7th-round pick, they currently have, they went Allen Edmonds, Phillips, Teron Johnson, Saran Neal, Wyatt Teller, and Ray McCloud. Ray McCloud is still on this team, who may not make the team. 6th-round pick, Austin Prohl is a 7th-round pick. The Bills have 1 6th and 2 7ths. So if they don't think that they hit later in the draft, you got to think that those are getting bundled immediately. Mm-hmm. So the 181st, 225th, and 228th will just be bundled and given to a team that needs players that is struggling with cap. And a lot of the teams that are struggling with cap, I'll just give you some of the numbers really quick. The top 10 teams that are struggling with the cap prior to the draft. You got the Buccaneers, Vikings, Panthers, Falcons, Rams. Rams are in a lot of trouble. They have $5.5 million. I'm sorry. They have $5.3 million in cap space, but they only have 59 players on their roster. That is a team that's going to trade the 30 out of the 31st, and they're going to try to get a player. So then you got the Steelers, the Saints, the Seahawks. Well, the Seahawks just got a little bit lighter, and the Chargers and the Giants. So you look at all of those teams that are having a little bit of trouble with their cap space. Those are the teams that you're going to want to target as far as trading up with or give players to or give some draft picks to, because those are the ones that want those very 4-year controllable contracts of guys that can build up in their system, but they don't have the money to sign those guys right now.
Yeah, and it's going to be a fun game of shuffle once you get to the third day of the draft, right?
It's fun.
And who had just brought it up in the chat? Let's see here. Yeah, we don't have room for 10 picks. No. That is totally true. Cameron Davis brings that up. And the life of John, how many picks are we using? I think a total of 6 players in this draft. And I think that's realistic, right?
Yeah.
It's 6 players is probably where you're targeting. Because, again, you add any more, and you're drafting guys to cut guys. You're just adding dead money, And so, why not? I think 6 is really, really a possibility.
They had 8 picks last year. 6 of them will be on the team this year. So that makes sense. Mm-hmm. I don't see McCloud.
Yeah, go ahead. Daniel Vargas brings up that 73 players are currently under contract right now. So you add 6 to that, right? And that brings you to 79, which means you still just sign 11 players. And I think that's a more comfortable place than being at 83 players, after the draft, where you have 4-year commitments to those players. That's what you're doing. You have 4-year commitments to them. You don't want to be in that. You don't want to be in that. Also, to Daniel Gary's point, saying that Trent Murphy played in 13 games, yes, in 43% of the snaps. So, I mean, it's there, right? If you're looking at line rotation, most of the other line played 60% of the snaps. So even though he's in 13 games, again, the snap count's a little bit lower than what you'd like to see. Still put in 4 sacks, which is nice, and only 43% of the snaps. If he's healthy, he's a nice asset to have, but you got to be healthy. I think it's fair to be skeptical, about that in any case, right? I mean, I think it's fair to be skeptical about that. Yeah, and we do want to mention, Paul Berg brings it up. Welcome to the 40s Club, Mario. Again, Mario just celebrated his birthday. Very proud that you made it, buddy. Very proud that you made it. Thank you. You even shaved.
I did. The fact that you have more facial hair than me is a fact that it is draft season. Things are crazy right now. You're locked in that little room.
Yeah, my eyes are bloodshot from just watching film all day.
Oh my god, dude! I got a little bit of cabin fever watching all the film I watched today. I had guys just blending into each other. I was like, "Is this Arkansas or Bama?" I can't tell the player anymore. It was pretty bad. But that being said, subs, thank you so much for the birthday wishes. I really appreciate it. It hasn't been easy, but it's been fun. But we talked about it too with the draft. Dabo still has some connections to Bama, right? So some of these undrafted free agents still might come out of Alabama. That's one. Two is this. They drafted, and this is probably one we should end on. They drafted Tremaine Edmonds. They traded up to get Tremaine Edmonds. Later, they drafted Wyatt Teller. So that little connection that they had, we talked about this before in some of our episodes that, when they scouted Hassan Reddick, but they ended up drafting Deion Dawkins. They visited with Oliver 3 times. Are there any offensive linemen probably in Houston that they probably could pick in the later rounds? I'm just saying. I'm just putting it out there because it's a talking point where they have done this in the past. Could it be one of those things where they're scouting a Houston guy for the 5th, 6th round or something like that? I mean, I know it's not a huge issue, but
yeah, I suppose that it's possible, right? But you look at Ed Oliver, and he's a man among boys across that line. And the thing that I think that is most surprising is the fact that, he was misplaced as a nose tackle. He's not a nose tackle, right? Mm-hmm. So when he was moved out to the edges, he was an animal, right? I mean, he was just simply an animal on the outside. So you're really looking at a player saying, well, he's got everything. In the few snaps that we've seen him outside, he looks like he could do a good job and be a 10th overall pick, right? Or be a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
So even with that Oliver, there is an immense amount of risk there because you're asking him to play a position that he didn't often play, right? That's what you're asking him to do. You're asking him to play a position he didn't really play all that much with Howard. So could the Bills be looking at linemen from Houston? I mean, I suppose, man. I definitely don't doubt that, but I wouldn't doubt the same thing as being done with Bryce Love because Bryce Love was visited a immense number of times by the Bills, and you know what? You know what Stanford does really well? Stanford does a real good job of producing some really talented offensive linemen. And Stanford's line moves a lot. They move side to side a lot. Mm-hmm. So could your visits with Bryce Love be talking about, maybe a tackle, maybe a guard that you're going to be able to snag in the 5th, 6th round? Yeah, you better believe it. If you're talking to a running back, you better know everything about his offensive lineman ahead of him.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So I have a feeling it's not so much about Ed Oliver. Again, this draft to me is about Bryce Love. And the Bills have spent so much time with him away from the film room that I got to think that something's going on there. And it may be recruiting offensive linemen or looking at that piece. and trying to gauge some value there. But they spent a lot of time on Bryce Love, and it's got to be for a reason. Something from Stanford's coming in this draft, unless somebody gets to him first. That's the way that I keep looking at it.
Yeah.
And it's gonna be a later pick, and I think that's kind of cool to take into consideration, right? When you're looking at who the Bills are targeting, like, okay, what targets are there that we're not really positive about? Nobody's confirmed yet, right? The Bills have to tell you who they're going to scout, but they don't have to tell you who they're talking about while they're there. So what kind of fun little mysteries are there? I really think the Bills are in on something at Stanford, it's going to be fascinating to watch and unfold.
Yes, and I can't wait, and you guys can't wait either, probably. We can't wait for the draft. Hopefully, we've answered a lot of your questions for tonight. Once again, we'd like to thank all the subs for coming in tonight. I know we didn't really announce that we were going live tonight, but you guys came in, and like always, you didn't disappoint. Love all the contributions you guys give to the channel and all the comments and everything. So we got to sit here and wait patiently for the next less than 48 hours until the draft comes. But Dustin, pump your brakes, buddy. It's okay. Don't worry. Hey, I get excited too. I'm not lying. But we'll see you guys. I think we go a half hour before the draft actually starts on Thursday. So if the draft starts at 7, we go live at 6:30, given our preliminaries. And we will be in the chat. Like, you guys want to ask us something or say a few things to us, we will be in the chat to answer your questions. But if they are delayed, you guys know why. The draft moves pretty fast as it goes. So can't wait to hear all your comments on Thursday. And thank you guys for joining us tonight. For my esteemed colleague and myself, we're not in the car, but we're glad you guys joined us tonight. And have a good evening. We'll see you at the draft. Paul, you got anything?
Yeah. The only thing I will say is, again, if you're not going to be able to make it down there, the live stream is going to be right here on our channel for the draft. So, just keep an eye on those notifications, and we'll pop up when we're ready to go. If we do have a problem, you never know. Tech issues happen all the time. If there is a problem, you can just make sure that we'll post a link to a Facebook feed, because we will have a stream going on Facebook as well through Rock Sports Network. So if for some reason YouTube is unavailable, we'll post in our community tab, so that way you guys at least have a link to our draft coverage. It'll be the same stream, just be through Rock Sports on Facebook if for some reason you're not able to go through us. Again, just to make sure that we got you covered. It'll be in a couple different areas. So, why is everybody calling me Ranch? Like, what the hell? Why did this catch on? We've had episodes. We've had great episodes that have like 30 views from when we started, and yet everybody's calling me Ranch.
It's okay, Ranch. I forgive you.
Awful.
See you Thursday, guys. Take it easy.
Yeah. See you Thursday, guys. Have a good one.